Welcome to Talk Tickers. Today we're diving straight into the recent earnings call for Vicarious Surgical. Think of this as your sort of rapid download, key financials, strategic moves, all that. What you need to know, basically.
Exactly. So let's jump into the financials. First quarter 2025, their total operating expenses were $15.7 million.
Okay, 15.7. How's that compare?
That's actually down a bit, about 2% compared to the same time last year. And if we dig into that a little, R&D spending saw a bit more of a dip, came in at $9.4 million.
Down from $10 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Down from $10 million. But interestingly, general and administrative G&A expenses edged up slightly.
Yeah.
$5.3 million from $5 million previously.
Okay. And sales and marketing?
That stayed pretty much flat, $1 million.
Right. So with those costs, what was the bottom line impact?
Well, their adjusted net loss landed at $15.3 million. That's 2.58 per share. Pretty consistent with last year, actually.
Okay.
On a GAAP basis, though, the net loss showed maybe a slight improvement. $15.4 million or $2.60 a share.
Compared to
a $17 million loss, $2.90 per share back in Q1 of 2024.
Right. And crucially, their cash position. Where do they end the quarter?
They finished Q1 with about $37 million. That's in cash equivalents, and short-term investments.
37 million. Okay. That cash runway is always, top of mind for companies at this stage. What about the burn rate?
Yeah, good question. So first quarter cash burn was roughly $12 million. And they're sticking to their full year 2025 projection, which is still around $50 million total burn for the year.
50 million. Okay.
And this really brings us to the operational side. Things are getting pretty pivotal there.
Right. The big news seems to be them aiming to become a clinical stage company this year. What does that actually, involve for them?
It's a big step. It means they're expecting to actually enroll their first patients in clinical studies probably within the next few quarters. The main goal really is showing the value proposition of their single port surgical system.
So single port approach, right? One incision.
Exactly. The idea is complex procedures through just one small opening. Now, potentially faster recovery, better outcomes, compared to the older multi-port methods. But to get there, to those clinical trials, they've laid out some key priorities for 2025.
Okay, let's break those down then. What are they laser focused on right now?
So first up, a big push on inventory. They're building out quite an expansive stock of their instrument arms, cameras, the capital equipment itself. They need a lot of units for all the rigorous testing that's required.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, they have to nail all the performance and safety testing. That's a whole suite of things. We're talking sterility, making sure it's biologically safe, so biocompatibility, and electromagnetic compatibility too, all critical.
Absolutely. Can't skip those. And the third priority?
Regulatory approvals.
Yeah.
Getting the green light in the specific countries where they plan to actually conduct those first human clinical trials.
Okay, that sounds like a heavy lift. The earnings call mentioned some specific progress in Q1, though.
They did, yeah. Tangible stuff. They finished building their first complete patient cart and surgeon console.
The main hardware pieces.
Right. And those are now undergoing system integration, sort of gearing up for that formal preclinical testing phase.
And the surgeon console is where the surgeon actually sits and drives the robot, right? The cart is patient side.
You got it. And they're already building the second set, another patient cart, another console. And that second set, that's the one specifically earmarked for the first human cases.
Okay, hardware's moving. What about the instruments, the tools the robot actually uses?
Good progress there, too. The initial sets of what they call assess instruments are produced and have gone through a bioburden review.
Bioburden. That's checking for microbes, essentially, before sterilization.
Exactly. It's a key step.
Yeah.
And they're about to kick off the biocompatibility and sterility testing on this new instrument inventory. Plus, they're sending even more instruments out for sterilization and, further testing rounds.
So parallel tracks, hardware, and instruments. Seems like they're coordinating it well.
Seems that way.
Yeah.
It all points towards getting ready for that clinical work.
So with all that prep, what's the actual plan for these first human cases look like? Is it a big trial right away?
No, they're starting small. The plan is to treat just a small number of patients initially, and probably only at a few clinical sites to start.
Okay. Focused.
Very focused. The main goal for these initial cases is demonstrating that the surgeon can successfully complete a ventral hernia repair using their system.
Ah, ventral hernia. And why that specific procedure?
Because that's also the primary endpoint, the main goal for their bigger pivotal clinical trial that comes later. So it aligns perfectly.
Yeah.
They also mentioned they're working really closely with the regulators, keeping them in the loop on the approval pathway.
Got it. Now, there was also news about a new partnership, right? UMass Memorial Medical Center. What's the story there?
Yeah, that seems pretty significant. UMass Memorial is a big player. It's the clinical partner for UMass Chan Medical School. And this collaboration is specifically focused on optimizing how the Vicarious system gets implemented in a real hospital setting.
So practical integration stuff.
Exactly. Things like refining the workflow around surgery, they call it cooperative practices. Also surgeon training, mentorship, more system testing. And they even talked about UMass potentially becoming an ambassador for the V1.0 system down the line.
And UMass being close to their headquarters, that's probably helpful too, in Waltham.
Oh, definitely. That proximity has to make the day-to-day collaboration much easier for testing, feedback, training, all of it. And this adds to their existing list of partners like HCA, University Hospitals, Pittsburgh Creates, Intermountain, LSU Health.
So they're building quite a network.
Seems like a deliberate strategy, yeah, building that clinical support base early.
Okay. And what about supply chain? We'd heard some rumblings about challenges there before. Any update?
Yeah, they touched on that. The message was that those earlier issues seem to be under control now. Importantly, they said there haven't been any recent schedule adjustments because of supply problems.
It's sign. Suggests more stability there as they approach these critical milestones.
Right. Stability is key right now.
Looking forward then, on the regulatory side, what's the next big hurdle?
The technical dossier submission, that's the big package of data. They're aiming to file that around the middle of this year, mid-2025.
And that's for the first in-country patient testing.
Correct. It includes all the critical safety data, testing results, performance metrics, a huge amount of information. They mentioned their timeline estimates for the review process are based on, what other companies with similar devices have experienced.
So benchmarking against others.
Yeah, and acknowledging that there'll likely be some back and forth with the regulatory agency. Questions, clarifications. That's pretty standard.
Makes sense. And how are these hospital partners like UMass helping right now before the system is actually commercial?
Well, the main benefits are probably geared towards the commercial stage, adoption and usage. But even now, they're helping Vicarious Surgical optimize the workflow. How the system fits into the OR, the procedures around it, that kind of early input is super valuable for making sure the integration is smooth when it does launch. It avoids potential headaches later.
Right, ironing out the kinks early.
Exactly. Getting it right for the real-world environment.
All right, this is Talk Tickers, and you know what time it is. Definitely not financial advice, but you look at Vicarious Surgical, they're clearly moving towards clinical trials. They talk about this huge, 96% untapped market in surgical robotics. It does spark some, let's say, interesting thoughts. Highly speculative, of course.
Highly speculative is the key phrase. So here's maybe an outrageous but plausible idea to chew on, just for discussion, right? Given their cash situation, the runway, and all the usual risks, regulatory hurdles, clinical trial outcomes are never guaranteed.
Big risks.
Huge. So one potential angle, super risky, might be a paired trade. Think about maybe shorting an established player in robotic surgery, one that's profitable but maybe growing slower.
An incumbent.
Right. And at the same time, taking a much smaller, highly speculative long position in Vicarious Surgical itself. The thesis, the gamble really, is that positive clinical news or a key regulatory win for Vicarious could cause a big re-rating of their stock, potentially grabbing attention, maybe even hinting at future market share shifts from those incumbents way down the road.
So betting on the disruptor against the established player in a balanced way, sort of.
Kind of, but let's be absolutely clear. This is high wire stuff, purely a thought experiment, not investment advice in any way, shape, or form.
Understood. Okay, that wraps up our deep dive into the Vicarious Surgical earnings call. We hit the financial highlights, their R&D and operational steps towards the clinic, those key partnerships. As always, we'd love to hear what you think. Their approach, the tech's potential, the whole surgical robotic space. Find us online, join the chat, and remember, this was just our take on the call highlights. Always do your own homework. Join us next time for another deep dive right here on Talk Tickers.